there. In today's video, we are talking about 4 tips you can use to overcome public speaking fear. And what do you think of when you think of public speaking? You think of a huge crowd, right? But public speaking is often even just speaking with someone at a networking event and you don't know anyone. Or it's speaking as a freelance grant writer with a prospective new client. Maybe you have an informational interview with them. That is a form of public speaking, right? So these strategies are going to help you overcome some of the fears that I know make you get a little tense and uncomfortable. All right, I'm going to start it out with a story. So I was invited to do this 7-minute story, tell a 7-minute story with 7 other people. And I get to this event and I look around and the other 6 people that are speaking are losing their minds. They keep saying to each other, oh, I can't wait for this to be over, and I hate public speaking, and like losing their minds. They're looking at their 3x5 card notes like that's somehow going to help their story get so much better in the next 10 minutes, right? I mean, they were losing their mind. And the reality is, I was nervous public speaking. I've always been really nervous about it. And I looked at that and I thought, there's not enough room here for all of us to be freaking out about public speaking. So I'm going to tell you in a second what happened next. It was in that moment that I overcame my fear of public speaking because I realized, A, this is a choice. I can choose with my mind how I decide to treat public speaking or anything for that matter that's uncomfortable. So here are some of the tips and how I came into that prepared. For one thing, I knew my story. That's actually sort of this tip right here, having dress rehearsals. I knew and I had memorized, remember this tip, it's a good one, my first and my last sentence. So even if I get a little, kind of mix up my story in the middle or whatever, at least I know I have a really strong intro, and especially your closing sentence is just dialed. It's memorized. So if you start to kind of lose it, you're like, okay, I know what my final sentence is, roll it out, right? And I decided to have fun with it. I wore my cowgirl boots. For those of you that don't know, I was raised 5th generation on a cattle ranch. I know I don't look it, but that is definitely where my roots come from. So I put those boots on. It made me feel confident, and I went up there and I said, I am going to have a good freaking time with this. So let's now, before I'm going to share that story at the very end if you're curious what the story was I shared. But let's talk about these tips that you can apply in your life. So number 1, have dress rehearsals. What do I mean by this? So if you're about to go have a conversation with a prospective client, having an informational interview, then practice the conversation. Actually script out what you want to say, particularly that transition point where you think, let's say you spot an opportunity to help them do a funding strategy. Well, script out how you're going to say that, right? And we do give this to you in the course, but I want you to actually spend the time writing it out, thinking about it, saying it in front of your phone, recording yourself, say it in front of a mirror. It's cheesy, but it works because the first couple times you say something, it's just clunky, it's just a fact. And that's why your first informational interview always feels awkward. But if you can practice these ahead of time, you're having your dress rehearsal, it's going to go so much more smoothly. Okay, number 2, embrace your battle scars. The reality is we always and all do have fumbling moments, or we say, oh, I wish I'd done this differently, or oh, whatever. Well, the point is you need to, I love this failure quote. I think I just read it in a Marie Forleo's book, but I succeed or I learn, but I never fail. That's how you need to approach these experiences as well. So I encourage you to do a post-mortem, which is kind of a dire word choice, but do a post-mortem on any opportunity where you felt you were in public speaking and look at what went well. What am I proud of myself for that I did great? And what is an area that I can learn from? What is something I can do better? And if you do that on the following and get in the habit of just constantly evaluating in a positive way, what did I do well? What can I learn from this to do better even next time? You're going to just exponentially take off in your own personal and professional growth. I have a quick example for you. Literally a scar story. So when I launched my online grant writing business, I decided to do this big live workshop, which freaked me out, but I knew that, this is pre-COVID, that people really thought they had to learn grant writing by going to a workshop. People didn't think they could learn this stuff online. It's just where they were at. So I decided to do these big events. And the final event was at this theater, and it had 300 people. I did fill 300 seats, which was just freaking me out because I also scheduled it on the day of the biggest event that happens all year. Ding dong, didn't even know. Anyway, so I'm going up to this presentation, and all of a sudden I get the biggest freaking cystic acne on my chin like you have ever seen. Like, it looked like someone took a marble and like stuck it under my skin. It was gross and mortifying. Like, really mortifying. Fortunately, it didn't go full blown while I was speaking, but it was there. And the reality, it was because I was so nervous. I was so nervous for this event. And people were shocked if they found out I had, kind of nervous public speaking because I nailed it. But it was this moment of like, oh my gosh, I literally have a battle scar from my public speaking. And, I used to look at that, and that whole period was just like, I didn't even want to see any photos for like 3 months. It took forever for the thing to kind of collapse. But when it finally did, and I can still see it in myself, or I could see it in photos, instead of looking at that and feeling like, oh, that's so ugly, I look at that now as, wow, I literally have a battle scar for pushing myself so beyond my comfort zone. I had reached out to some strategic partners and to ask for advice. How do I throw an event this big? What should I do? And there was a male business leader that said, you're never going to succeed. I think you're always going to do everything yourself. And it was just so hurtful, but also so motivating to show him he was wrong. And so I can just see these scars, and I see, man, I learned and I grew from this experience. You're going to have the same thing. Look back on the scars you have. Where are your battle wins, right? And what did you learn from that? How are you stronger and more resilient? And also just have character, right? That's how we have identity and unique personality factors, right? It's because we've got our battle scars. Number 3, this is a reality. If you can accept it, you're going to be a whole heck of a lot happier. You cannot be comfortable and fulfilled. You can momentarily. You can definitely be like, I finally got this stuff figured out. This is great. This is working so well. But the reality is, if you're the type of person, which you are if you're watching this video, you're always hungry to be growing, expanding your mind, becoming something bigger and better as an individual. And the reality is, you don't stay in the comfort zone too long before you're either A, bored, right, or you're just restless. And so you just have to do something, take action, and then that sets you into the cycle of, okay, now it's hard, now it's uncomfortable again, now there's fear and anxiety around doing these new things that you've never done before, but you're fulfilled and you're pushing yourself. So embrace this. Okay, I'm not going to always be comfortable and be fulfilled. So tip number 4 is prep your questions ahead of time. So if you are going to go to a networking event when those things become a thing again, think about 2 to 3 questions, even 1 if you want, that you can go in, and if all of a sudden you kind of have a awkward, don't know moment of silence between you and whoever you're speaking with, you have that question that you've already formulated that you can pull out and ask. So I do this all the time whenever my partner and I go to events, even if we're just going to a dinner party and we don't know anybody, I'll say, what are the questions we're going to ask ahead of time? So let's say you go to a professional association event. Maybe ask, hey, or no, different example. Let's say you're trying to meet someone in the Grant Writing Unicorn Collective and you're in the program. Ask them, hey, why did you decide to join? Super easy question. You're going to unpack all sorts of interesting reasons about why they made that career transition and decision in their life. So just go into these situations with your questions prepped. That's also why in the informational interview method that we teach in the Grant Writing Unicorn methodology, that you go with, in hand, your page or 2 pages of questions. So you don't have to expend energy trying to come up with it on the spot. Just look down, look at your question, and ask it. There's no shame in that whatsoever. All right, so now let's recap these, and if you feel like knowing what my story was on the stage that I addressed my public speaking fears forever, I'll share that. Okay, so tips to overcoming public speaking fears or speaking to anybody for that matter. Number 1, have your dress rehearsals. Practice what you're going to say. Number 2, embrace your battle scars. Number 3, accept you can't be comfortable and fulfilled. And number 4, prep your questions. All right, so how about that story? All right, so first 3 weeks of my business, I get a letter from healthcare.gov saying we need documentation for your extreme drop in income. So we actually believe you because that's not how much you made the year before. So I get to work trying to figure out what documentation I can provide them, except for the fact that, okay, I'm just starting a business, I'm just getting going. And I look at my numbers and I think, oh my gosh, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. I don't have hardly any financial runway. I don't know how I'm going to make money. I just don't. Because in the first 3 months when I started my business, it was not to be a freelance grant writer. And so, I freaked out. And I come home and I just don't even feel like I'm worthy of going out and playing over the weekend. I need to get my butt to work and figure out what I'm going to do. But in my household, we went outside and we enjoyed the outdoors. And in Alaska, that means backcountry skiing in the winter. So I go out, I'm out touring with 3 boys. They're really strong. I'm just trying to keep up. My mood is freaking terrible, not gonna lie. I feel weaker. I just was not having the most fun time skiing, but I was starting to, with every stride, shed that stress, shed that like coming into the outdoors, the mountains, the blue sky. Like I was feeling connected and more positive and upbeat. My frequency, my vibrations were increasing. So we weasel our way to the top of this peak. And at the top of it, there's just enough room for the 3 of us, I think it was 3 actually on that trip, to kick in a spot to transition our skis into downhill mode. And my ski partner, the leader of the trip, said, all right, so here's the deal. I think this couloir is gonna go, but I'm not for sure. We've had a lot of snow this year. I think it will. It does choke, and there could be a couple foot drop, but I think it'll be skiable. And if you don't know what a couloir is, Google it. That could be the easiest way to see it. But essentially, it's this narrow feature of rock on both sides with snow in the middle that you can ski. Think of it as like a straw, right? And it's so fun. It's my favorite feature. And anyway, so we're at the top of this, and I am freaking out. I'm thinking, I have actually met my limits as a skier. I don't know if I can do this, but there's not really another option. I wanted to go back to the car, but that's not, you can't exactly just ditch and go by yourself. I was freaking out, so I did the second best thing that I know what to do when I'm stressing. I eat some bacon and I eat some gummy bears, so as that bacon fat is melting in my mouth and that sugar is hitting my bloodstream, I'm feeling a little bit better, but I know I need to take action. And I say, guys, I'm going first. And they say, are you sure? Because if you get down there and it's not skiable, you're gonna have to boot back up by yourself. And when you're 5'0" then the snow's a lot, that's hard work. I say, no, I need to do it. Because I knew in my mind that I was kind of freaking out and barely keeping it together. And that if I needed to stay strong, and by doing that, I needed to take action. So I make a couple turns, it's crunchy and awful. There's just these shark fin rocks poking through. And then as I crest out of sight, it is powder, delight, wonderful turns, and I just come into it. And as I narrow myself down to this narrowing section of the couloir, it's totally skiable. I had best tracks, first one to go. Get through it. It was amazing. Make a big arching turn and tuck myself in just to the left of it. I get out my radio and I say, all right, boys, it's really, really good. Let it rip. So the next one comes down and I'm able to capture pictures of everyone skiing, the coolest part of this whole feature. And I also got this extra solitude and alone time on the mountain. And I realized in that moment that it always looks scary from the top. You don't know what you're going to encounter. You don't always know what roadblocks exist down further, right, on your trail. But when you make a couple turns, you'll gain your confidence and you realize, oh, I can do this. This is within my abilities. I can grow into this. So I used to tell this story where I'd say, I haven't made it to the bottom of the ramp yet. I'm still halfway in the couloir, but I think now that a couple more years have passed, I can tell you, yeah, I've skied all the way out the apron and I'm in the base of the valley looking up and saying, cool, I can do it. And you can do the same. So I want you to imagine yourself on the top of something, like public speaking or whatever it is that you're chasing, and realize it's normal to be freaked at the top and want to go back to the car, want to go back to safety and security. But all you have to do is take action, go first, make a few turns, and it will come and you're going to see, I can do this. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Just have to take action and make a few turns. Okay, so that's it for today's video. Please feel free to add in the comment section how you have overcome your fears of public speaking or any sort of tips in general for networking. I'd love to know what works for you. And if you like this video, be sure to hit subscribe and I'll be getting more your way shortly. All right, that's it. See ya.